This is Diamond D with where I'm giving you some love advice, some happiness advice, some everyday good advice to make your day a little more loving. Hi, I'm Diamond D with Love and Happiness, where I'm giving you some love advice, some happiness advice, some everyday good advice to make your day a little more loving. Our guest today is Essence Magazine best-selling author, Nikkea Sharee. She is a multimedia megaforce for over a decade. Her award-winning novels include a variety of genres from drama, romance, murder mystery, poetry, and young adult fiction. Miss Sharee is a well-acclaimed spoken word artist and has performed in front of crowds from New York to California. Currently, Miss Sharee is the co-founder, producer, and creative director of Quale Legacy LLC, an award-winning film company that develops documentaries and short films. Her latest films, Man Listen and Sis You Okay, are social documentaries on mental health and are currently available on Amazon. Let's watch the trailer for Sis You Okay.
Have you ever heard of a princess that got dropped through the cracks?
Mental health and having depression doesn't mean that you're crazy.
Right.
It means that you have a problem.
The abuse at home is what motivated me to leave at 13 years old and go do my own thing.
Little girls are taught. I know I was one of them from a very young age. What goes on in this house stays in this house. Wrong attitude. Because of that very philosophy, at 18 I wound up in a psych ward because I was told to hold it. Keep it quiet, don't cry, don't tell anybody. You know, there would be consequences if I did. For a child, that's a lot. For an adult, that's a lot.
Wow, that was phenomenal. Thank you so much, Miss Sharee, for being on the show today. I appreciate you.
Thank you for having me.
So tell me what motivated you to create Sis You're Okay.
So, Sis You Okay actually came from on our set. We it's a small production company. We have it's mainly majority African American women, and then we have one male that's on African American men that's on our team. And we kind of got this thing where we would just check on each other while we were working on films and just say, you know, sis, you okay? It's just, you know, kind of that homegirl thing that you do, that you've done all your life, just checking on your friend, and just you look at them, just, you know, sis, you okay? And you wanted to just check up real quick to see how is our way of saying, okay, like really, how are you doing? Like seriously, as we were working on the different pieces that we have, life was happening around us. We had people that were going through divorce. We had people that were dealing with things with their children. People, and mind you, again, where it's a small group, but we all were dealing with some things that were triggering for each of us in different ways. And at some point, we needed to stop and check on each other. So in that, I thought about the fact that sometimes we don't check on each other the way that we should. And it's such a valid question that we really should reevaluate how we even use that in social settings, because in some instances it's just so casual that we're not even looking for a response, but there really are some things that may be going on deeper underneath the surface of that general, oh, I'm a fine answer that we do, you know, that our friends, our strong ones, are relying on us to check in on each other. One of my staff, who is our assistant director for all of our films, Siobhan Mitchell, she's also a counselor by trade. And she had us working on a documentary that was delving into depression and trauma, things of that nature. And working on that piece with her and having these conversations on set, we decided, okay, let's continue to expound on this, and let's not let the ball stop here. let's continue. So we actually have a series that we'll be working on. Is Issue Okay is the first, Man Listen is the next, and then we have some other ones that we're working on. Even during COVID, we've been kind of really brainstorming and thinking about things, but we really flesh these documentaries out. And it just became something that was like, it went on a life of its own, but it had its own legs. When we filmed both Issue Okay and Man Listen, I'm talking about a crew of 5 or less. In some instances, when we filmed the individual scenes, we might have had 2 or 3 or maybe one of us, just to make sure that people felt comfortable to tell their stories, to have these conversations. And then in the group settings, of course, there were more people, but it really was important to say, okay, let's think about these. When we say Issue Okay, when we say Man Listen, or whatever way that you check on your people, what does that truly mean? Are we really listening? Are we really checking to make sure that they are okay? We have an obligation to ourselves and to our friends and our families that when we ask these questions, that we show up and be present and really listen to their stories and show that we are a resource, a door to lean on, and all of those things, so that if they are not okay and they really do need you to listen to them, they have a springboard to be able to soak that information up and maybe give them something back that will help them, push them to motivate and go on further. So in the last 3 years since this film has come out for Issue Okay, and then Man Listen came out earlier last year, the responses that we've gotten from people around the world has been consistent. And the fact that these are conversations that have been waiting to be heard, specifically in our communities, as far as our African American communities, because mental health has been such a taboo topic. It's like if you mention mental health, it's almost equating to, just all automatically, oh, they crazy, or, nobody talks about the uncle that just got put away somewhere or something like that. It's time to have these conversations. What's really happening, dealing with trauma, sexual abuse, depression, anxiety, post-traumatic stress. These are things that are in our community, and it's time for us to have these conversations.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's far past time to have these conversations. Can you talk a little bit how you found the participants for your documentary?
We know all of the participants 100%. We did put out a casting call on our personal social media pages for both Issue Okay and Man Listen, and they literally closed that same day from people that we knew, which went back to the fact that you need to check on your people, right? Mm-hmm. So in getting these participants and hearing and knowing who they were, it was even that much more important to make sure that we authentically shared their stories. And much of the film, when we're doing the individual interviews and we're talking to them, we literally might be sitting in their home, setting the camera up and say, share your story. I had a couple questions that I threw out to them, but for the most part, it was very open-ended, and we made sure that we created a safe space. You'll notice that for Issue Okay, there were some people that were in individual interviews that weren't in the group sessions because they weren't, they were able to share their story on a one-on-one space, but even then they were very hesitant in some cases. And again, we said, share what you feel. Share how much you feel comfortable sharing. And there were some that were like, okay, I can do the public interview as well, the group interview as well. And then some in the group interview that didn't do the one-on-one interview, while they were in the group after we filmed, they were like, man, what I thought I was dealing with was really heavy, and listening to these others, it almost doesn't compare. So, and it's not to say that their story was any less, but it's just a realization that we're in a world where everyone is dealing with something, and it helps to wake up and see that, we're not alone.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. Now, the counselor that was in the documentary, Mecca, is she working with the ladies continuously? By chance, perhaps her continuous work is going to lead up into maybe another documentary about the women to show how they benefited and grown from counseling? Or what are you envisioning with that particular documentary as it goes to the next stages?
Mecca, she has provided resources for the ladies, so she has not necessarily been one-on-one with each of them, but she has definitely been open, have had an open door for each of them in instances that they did need additional assistance by any means, because of course when dealing with counseling and therapists and things of that nature, we also have to consider the resources that are available based off of that person's what they are able to reach out to or what have you. So there are different restraints and privacy things that go on there, but she definitely has been open to provide any, if she isn't able directly to be their therapist or counselor, what have you, to provide the resources. She's also done the same thing with offering resources for our men's panel. So the therapist that was on that set is her direct connection. She is a good friend of mine. She's to this day, she has been sending people that other counselors that she's worked with, finding the documentary online and watching it and showing up and being resources to different people that have been in the film and otherwise. Some of the participants of the film, for example, Dee Dee, she's actually a counselor herself as well. So she has been touching base and staying connected and with the different ladies that have been in the film. Sonia Holt, she is a domestic abuse counselor survivor. She has her own non-profit charity that consistently, literally every single day, she's dealing with in the fields women in this journey. So they definitely have resources. We have definitely been reaching back out to them. In fact, we had someone they watched the film and sent us hardback copies of their books for resources to all the ladies, and they were signed and we sent them to each of them. I talk to them frequently. I have not yet slated for a follow-up on their stories. I can't say that that's something that's going to be ruled out. I will say that we have some other stories that are on the table that we're looking at. So that might be something that further down the line we will revisit, which will give them time to live and kind of maybe look back on the story and where they were in the space of 2017 when we filmed this. And maybe, 2 years later, it'll be 5 years, right? So that's certainly something that we might look into. It's just not something that we immediately are working on.
What was so impressive for me with the ladies' stories is how they took their pain, their trauma, like you mentioned with Sonia and Dee Dee's story, how they experienced childhood sexual abuse, domestic violence, other things that caused them to have that mental trauma. And they were able to handle it, to overcome it, and to use what they had experienced for the greater good of helping others. And I feel that that's the ultimate blessing and goal, at least the ultimate blessing and goal that I received from watching the documentary. What do you want people to see or to gain when they watch the documentary? Like, what would be the underlying takeaway that you would want them to walk away from after they watch the movie to have?
We built the documentary in a very specific way, from them sharing their personal stories, hearing the group sessions, and then the resources from Mecca and the counselors at the end of each piece. But at the end, we really wanted everyone to take away, okay, so where do I go from here? We wanted to make sure that everyone had resources at the end. When we did the screening, we had counselors there, that anyone in the audience were able to actually get live counseling. We did that for both the men and the women screening. Made sure they had paper resources just in case they weren't comfortable talking to someone there. We really wanted to push that, yes, depression is in our community. Yes, anxiety is in our community. Yes, we have all of these different struggles that we go through, but we don't have to stay there. We don't have to live there. We can always get up, right? Amel LaRue had a song, I know you're down, but when are you going to get up? And that's really what we wanted to do with these films. It wasn't about living in the depression and to the point that we can't see anything other than the pain. We wanted to show that there's pain out there, but there's also promise. So at the end, we gave each person kind of a chance to talk about, okay, so going through what you went through, what do you have to, what does this, what does Sis You Okay mean to you? What is it, give us something positive. We wanted to end on a positive note. We wanted to peel off the Band-Aid of the hurt and the pain and the suffering, but we wanted to make sure that we put in that into perspective to say, but I'm still alive. I'm still living. I'm still pushing forward. And we hope that if we can reach even one person with that message to say that you can still push forward. These women went through it. These men went through it. We had men that went through sexual abuse, just the same as the women that went through sexual abuse, and men that were thinking about committing suicide, women that had contemplated suicide. We the trauma, the stories that came through. When we were doing Man Listen, we had people call us after we had already wrapped filming and was like, no, I really need to get this story out because I'm considering this. My family member had committed suicide, and this is something that's heavy for me. And it's close and near and dear to me. We opened the filming back up and just went ahead and filmed that piece. But again, at the end, we wanted to be able to say, okay, if we show these real stories from these people that we personally know, and we, some of those stories I knew that people were going through and some I didn't, sharing that and it opening an eye for me and some of the things that I've personally gone through, I felt deeply that, and I said this to my crew, we're going to touch someone out there that's going through these things and be able to give them a reason to go on. And that's what it's all about. The ability to push forward. To go on. It's such a deeper meaning for us. If you notice, all of our films are free on Amazon if you have Prime. This is, anything that I do, anything that our crew does, our staff, we don't put money as a focus. We put the message first. That's really what our purpose is. How do we get the messages out to a point that, for one, they're long lasting, so someone 20 years from now can find this film and might be going through something and say, okay, because they did, I can. Mm-hmm. How can we get this message out there to the masses, regardless of whether it makes a dime, and get that, make it to a point where someone understands what it is that we're trying to do, and hopefully share that message on to others. And so far, that's what's been happening with the film, without us having, anyone backing us that's of a major name. And this is self-funded. We pulled out of our pockets. We fed people ourselves. We do everything ourselves. Without all the, it's great that Amazon is currently highlighting Sis You Okay, but without that major backing, are we still willing to do this and put that message out there? And the answer was yes. And that's what we've been doing. That's what we've been committed to do.
And I thank you for doing it, because Sis You Okay, I loved it. Man Listen, I haven't seen it yet, but I will see it. But I saw the trailer and I thought, oh, wow, you are going to be able to touch and help so many men with that documentary, because I think the latest statistic is 1 in 4 men have been either sexually assaulted or raped. And I want to say that number probably is higher in the Black community, because Black men don't share their personal stories when they experience that sexual trauma. But I feel that your documentary is going to be a release for so many men to say that, hey, like you said before, they went through it, they overcame it, and there is help out there for me if I want to pick up the phone and seek that help. So I thank you for creating both documentaries, and I appreciate you and your efforts, your labor of love in making sure that it came into fruition. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
I know that prior to making this movie that you were an author. How did you make the transition from being an author to being a movie producer?
Funny story. My sister is actually, who's my co-founder. She is the one that decided to go into film. She decided that she would go to LA Film School and get a degree. And she did. She I mean, she literally has all the bells and whistles that Hollywood has. And she is also the editor for all my books. So one day I sent her one of my books to edit that was going to be a part of the anthology with myself and two other friends of mine that we actually did that book for 100% free as well. It was all the proceeds went towards scholarships for college for children in our area. Well, when she sent back the manuscript for the book, she sent back a script for the film. Mm-hmm. And did not tell me she was doing this. She just ended up going in and sending this back. She said, hey, in reading the book and editing the book, I think that it will make a great film. So at the time, one of my friends that was in the book, that the anthology that I was working with, her name is Iris Bowling, a phenomenal author. Iris Bowling, and then the other author is Loretta R. Walls. The book, that anthology is called Heroes. So it's also on Amazon. At the time, she was working to turn her book into a film. Her book is, whew, it's deep. It's a political romance drama. So as my sister's going to school, my friend says, well, I want to turn this book into a film. And she was looking for someone to create the script. Well, my sister just created my book into a script. So I sent her information. They connected. She ends up writing the script for the book to film project for that. And I worked on that project as the producer. I previously had background in television and stage theater and performing as a spoken word artist, but I had not quite had experience as far as being an actual producer. So that was my first project, and my first job was to drive down to the television station and get us a spot on the television, on TV, and I did, and we did, and it's been a great ride for there. So the transition has been kind of like just a compound of all these different experiences. We did end up turning the script that my sister did for me into a film that was our first film. It's a short film called Hostile, and it is it's actually on Gumroad. We did that completely. We did all of our stuff is independent, but before we were able to get to the Amazon stage, that was our very first one, so we put it there. And we did our screenings. We did everything from the ground, from the belly up. But it's been a tremendous experience. But I have to give that credit to my sister, because if it not had been for her, I probably would have done film for myself, but it probably wouldn't have been this quick of a transition, I'll say.
Mm-hmm. So I know you mentioned the spoken word artist work that you do. I had an opportunity to listen to Over Lover. I loved it. So I have to ask you, what is an over lover? If you can describe an over lover to our viewers, that would be helpful.
So, okay. So over lover, that's me really. I'm one of those type of people where I go 0 to 100 real quick. Either I love you and I'm giving you my all, or when you turn me off, you don't want to turn me off, because I'm gone. I'm out. I'm like, okay, I give you a lot of chances before we get to that point. But honey, once I get there, I'm like, okay, you are no longer, it's just kind of like that on or off switch. So Over Lover really was about that. Like, I love hard. I love deep. Mm-hmm. I love with my whole self. And if you mess this up, then you just really didn't want it, and that's cool, but I got to move on. Mm-hmm. And that was a fun project to do. I actually performed that with a friend of mine. So this was about 6 years ago. He wrote some pieces. There's a version did you hear the version with a guy on it, or was it just me?
I heard it with just you. Yeah.
Okay, so there's a version on YouTube and Amazon, because he has an album out called, his name is J God. So he has a version from the men's perspective. So I'm coming from the women's and he's coming from the men's, and we mashed it together. So, it really was a fun piece to write. I did not write it with the intent of performing it that way. That was when I'm in a poetry writing mood, I will have like 300 poems written in a year. So yeah, so it was one of those poems that was just like, and I was that was my only studio album, which is free on SoundCloud, Focus. And I was going through all these poems like, okay, but what will sound good in the studio? So that piece was one that I went ahead and recorded.
So Miss Sharee, how can people find you?
I am Nikkea Sharee on all social media platforms. So it's Nikkea Sharee, Sharee. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, any of those platforms, they can feel free to reach out for our film. Is Kweli Legacy, Kweli Legacy on Instagram, Twitter, as well as Facebook, our Facebook page. So we try to keep it very uniform across the board with all of the, so it's kind of easy to kind of catch us, and we post interchangeably on each of them. But if you want to focus on the films and notebook work, Kweli Legacy on Facebook, you can see our trailers and things of that nature. And on Amazon, you can just simply type in Nikkea Sharee, and both films and books will pop right up.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being on the show today. I truly appreciate you. And to my viewers, let me leave you with this quote from Dr. Maya Angelou. It says, hate, it has caused a lot of problems in this world, but has not solved any one of them. I'm Diamond D with Love and Happiness, reminding you that God loves you